Hey everyone, this is Neil from TheOverclocker Magazine. Today I'm bringing you the first part of my 10th generation Core Series CPU review. Now the reason I talk about the first part is because basically a lot of things came really late to me, so I wasn't able to get through all the testing that I wanted to get through. However, I thought that I should at least talk to you on the day of release and just give you my findings over the last week or so since I've had the CPUs and just let you know what it's looking like right now. Intel have added a lot of overclocking and tweaker friendly options to the CPU, or rather to the platform. So that includes per core HT, that includes voltage frequency curves and things like that. So throughout my entire testing, I started with the traditional means of overclocking. So this is just basically just upping the clock speed, disabling HT universally, or rather across the entire CPU, and basically recording figures to find out where the CPU stacks against the other CPUs that have come out. The funny thing is, Intel over the last 3 generations, I would even say from 8700, in fact for a long time actually, Intel has always had the fastest gaming CPUs. So in having the fastest gaming CPUs and dealing with an architecture that's probably long in the tooth now, this is where Intel has maximized the advantage. And I said this before with the previous generation CPUs, I think it was 9th gen, and also with the 10980XE, and they've basically done the same here again. So what Intel is primarily focusing on now is gaming. Gaming is their strong point. Gaming is basically their only game in town, and of course overclocking as well. What we're looking at here is yet more clock frequency or higher clock frequency, but we also have tuning abilities and overclocking abilities that Intel has added that we previously didn't have. So when I was testing initially across several motherboards, I just couldn't get the CPU to do 5.3 gigahertz, and I'm talking on what bird is that? Why now? It's near impossible to get the 10900K to 5.3 gigahertz on any core, right? I managed to do it while I was tuning the system manually, so I was setting per core frequency limits and setting how many cores would activate that particular frequency. Now this I only discovered literally yesterday, so you'll be seeing this today. So yeah, this was yesterday. And I must say that if you don't do that, then you're almost never going to experience, or at least right now, you're not going to experience 5.3 gigahertz in any sort of workload, whether it's gaming, whether it's productivity work or anything of the sort. In fact, the only time I was able to make sure that I got the 5.3 gigahertz or probably even higher was when I was running Cinebench and specifically selecting just to test one core, to load one core. And then I was able to see that, oh, the CPU does actually get to 5.3 gigahertz, 5.4 gigahertz, and so forth. That's my own tuning, by the way. 5.4 gigahertz you will not get out the box. But anyway, if you're just going to be playing games, if you just install this in your system and just start playing games and you look at the frequency, you're mostly going to be sitting at 4.9 gigahertz. And the reason being, all the cores go to 4.9 gigahertz, which I think is just the regular Turbo Boost Max 3.0. So it goes to 4.9 gigahertz and it's fairly stable there. In fact, you will see in the benchmarks that I ran, particularly the Borderlands 3 benchmark, that the CPU stayed at around 4.9 gigahertz. This is at stock, and even at the overclocked settings, it stayed at the clocks that I had set regardless of the load. Now, what does 4.9 gigahertz mean? 4.9 gigahertz means that you're going to get some of the best gaming performance there is. In fact, I think it's the best gaming performance that Intel has ever given us on any platform. And the reason being, or rather, the reason for that is more to do with the consistent 4.9 gigahertz clock frequency that you get, rather than the 5.3 gigahertz potential clock frequency that you can get. If you look back at the 9900KS, out the box, yes, it could do 5 gigahertz, but it was for a very short amount of time. Whereas with the 10900K, I think Intel has increased that time window to about 56 seconds or something of the sort, where the CPU can actually boost quite high, but that's only with TVB. With Turbo Boost Max 3.0, which is the 4.9 gigahertz clock that you do get, it always stays there, right? I haven't been able to load the CPU in a way where it lowers or it goes lower than 4.9 gigahertz. And at 4.9 gigahertz, this is an interesting bit. You actually don't get the power draw that Intel claims. You don't get the 100, I think it's 125 watts, 127 watts. And this is even during Prime 95. So I'm not sure if this is a motherboard characteristic or if it's something just inherent to the CPU. It's still early days. I've literally just had, just over 7 days, maybe 8 days with the CPUs. So there's a lot to still discover. What I've seen so far was just 8 days of these systems. I think that we're onto something pretty cool. Now, Intel, having borrowed a lot from the HEDT platform, the 10th generation core CPUs for X299, what they didn't bring with it is the ability to turn off individual cores. I'm not talking about just selecting, I want 10 cores, 9 cores, or whatever it may be. I'm saying being able to actually select, I want core number 1 on, I want core number 2 off, number 4 on, number 3 off, I want 6 on and 8 off. That's a very useful feature, and I think if we had that feature of individual core toggling mixed in with hyper-threading on and off and the voltage frequency curve, man, that would have been the ultimate. But unfortunately, we don't have that right now. Right now, all you have is turn off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 10. But you don't really know if you're turning off the core that's one of the best, or if not the best core. It would have been cool to see that feature from X299 10th generation core CPUs come over to the desktop parts. Where I am right now, I think things can only get better. But I can tell you, last week things were rough. On some motherboards, there isn't much overclocking you're going to do. What you can do is just turn off all the guards that basically regulate the CPU power consumption. If you just turn those off and let the CPU do what it was always going to do, you're probably going to get the best performance. Because I actually did see, this was actually on the Aorus Pro AX, that if you turn off the protection mechanisms and things like that on the 10600K, it instantly goes to 5.1 gigahertz across all 6 cores and obviously all 12 threads, which is pretty awesome. And doing a manual overclock for that same CPU, I could only get 5.2 gigahertz. So power consumption when gaming, it's actually not bad at all. It's not any worse than when you were with the 9900KS or any other CPU that come before. But you do get better performance provided you are not necessarily overclocking. If you do manual overclocking, things are going to get a little bit more interesting for you. You can extract even more performance than what Intel is giving you without necessarily using up too much power. In fact, I was able to get 5.4 gigahertz going with no hyper-threading on at all. Okay, so, but that 5.4 gigahertz, again, needed me to work with the voltage frequency curves and that sort of thing. But I'll tell you this in a written form at a later stage where I can actually illustrate to you what I mean by that. So anyway, that's it for the first part of this review, guys. Be sure to check out the second part of the review and the conclusion and my overall thoughts and summary of the 10th generation core CPUs in the magazine that's coming out at the end of the month. Until next time, don't forget to share, like, subscribe. I've been Neo and you guys have been cool. I'll see you on the flip side. Peace.